What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to GEA Fan TV. My name is Aaron and we are back again to look at what would have happened in the National Football League. Now obviously in the last video we looked through divisions 3 and 4, so today what we're going to be doing is looking through divisions 1 and 2, predicting what would have happened in the National Football League had the season have carried on as normal. Now obviously the GEA have actually come out recently in the time that when I recorded the last video and pretty much guaranteed that the National Football League will actually resume at the start of October. So I suppose one thing to kind of clarify before making this video is this is not necessarily a prediction of what will happen when the National League resumes. So this is more so for what would have happened in the National Football League had it have continued as normal. Of course, first of all though, before we jump into it, if you could do me a massive favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that stuff. Share this out to your friends and family, whoever might be interested in some more GEA content at this time. And yeah lads, of course, let's jump straight into it. Alright lads, so we will start with Division 2. Now in the last video, obviously in Division 3 and 4, what we did was we ran through the relegation fight, and then we also ran through some of the promotion chases in the respective divisions in Divisions 3 and 4. Now in Division 2, it's a little bit of a different division because it's kind of all up in the air. I mean, you've got some teams that are fighting for promotion that could still potentially get relegated. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to just run through each county and then make the predictions off of the last two games, and then we'll see where they end up. But if we just have a look at the table right now, Division 2 in full, we will see that, as I just said, like, it very much is up in the air. You do obviously have Armagh down there with 2 points. I think they're the only side that is pretty much nailed on to get relegated. But other than that, I mean, it's very much up in the air. I mean, you have Clare down there in 7th, just behind Kildare. Then you've got Laois on 5 points. You've got Westmeath on 5 points. Cavan on 6 points. I mean, Cavan in 3rd, but actually only 2 points clear of Clare, who are in the relegation zone, which is kind of crazy. And then obviously you have Armagh and Roscommon. So it is very much up in the air. I mean, a lot depends on those last two fixtures and what would have happened there. Very much still up in the air, and still very much all to play for. But we will start, of course, by talking a bit about Fermanagh. Now, Fermanagh, of course, obviously Rory Gallagher leaving as manager last year, and of course, you know, very much as we all well know, Fermanagh were a very defensive-based team. They operated that blanket defence. They were very hard to break down, and it made them very tricky to beat in the National League in the past couple of years, hence why they've ended up in Division 2. Now obviously they've brought the new manager in, they've altered their tactics a little bit. They haven't changed too much, but they have just made a couple of little switches just to really try and come out of that defensive system and start playing more attractive football. Now the only problem for Fermanagh, of course, has been that it's very difficult to sort of transition out of that system. And if we look through some of their results, for example, so they lost to Kildare on their opening day of the season, which actually wasn't too bad. Like, they lost by 4 points away to Kildare, not the worst result in the world. And then they actually beat Roscommon. So Fermanagh were looking pretty decent at the start of the season, you know, to get a win over Roscommon. As we said before, Roscommon up in the top 2, so a really surprise result, winning 13 points to 12. And then, of course, since then, unfortunately, they've lost their next 3 matches. They lost to Westmeath, and they also lost to Armagh as well. So it certainly hasn't been too good for Fermanagh. They've certainly lacked a lot of attack in the forward area. They haven't really been that high of a scoring team, which I think has caught up in them. And in terms of some of their kind of bright players who stood out for me in the division so far, I would have to look at Conal Jones and Kieran Corrigan. They were both the standout players when they beat Roscommon. Fermanagh, I mean, certainly it's going to be very tricky for them coming away from the system that they operated in the past couple of years under Rory Gallagher, and coming into this sort of new system. It's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets better, and I do think it's just been very difficult for Fermanagh to really adapt to that. And then we have Clare, who, to be perfectly honest, I actually think are quite unlucky to be in the position that they're in with 4 points, because I actually think Clare have looked pretty good. I mean, other than that poor display away at Roscommon where they only kicked 4 points, I actually think they've done quite well, in my opinion. I mean, they've 2 wins on the board there. They actually beat Kildare at home, and then they beat Cavan away. where they were two of their winning matches, and in two of their other defeats they actually only lost by 1 point margin. So they lost to Westmeath 2-9 to 1-11 on the opening day of the season, and they also had a 1 point defeat to Laois as well. So just a little bit unlucky, Clare, in terms of those games. I mean, if they had got over the line in one of those games that they lost by a point, I mean, we could be talking about Clare in a potential promotion race. So I think they've been a little bit unlucky at times. I do think the fixtures kind of favour them getting out of this. As we said before, they play for Armagh at home going into the final day of the season. So definitely still a lot of potential for Clare to get out of the relegation zone. But certainly, in my opinion, they've just been a little bit unlucky to be down there in the bottom two with 4 points at this current stage. And then we have Kildare. Now, Kildare have been very disappointing, in my opinion, in Division 2. I mean, we were talking about them as potentially one of the promotion candidates, and instead they've actually ended up in a relegation battle in many ways, which is very disappointing for Kildare. Obviously, they've brought Jack O'Connor in as a new manager. I mean, he's won All-Irelands before with Kerry as a manager. He knows all about management at the highest level. He just hasn't quite got the best out of this Kildare team at this current time. And it's been disappointing. I mean, if we look at how their season has gone so far, I mean, they started quite well. I mean, they beat Fermanagh by 4 points, scoring 2 goals and 12 points. So a decent victory for the opening game, and quite high scoring for the opening game of a National League season. But unfortunately, since then, it has been disappointing. They had 3 straight defeats. The away defeat to Clare that we were just speaking about. They then lost 6 points to Armagh, which was pretty disappointing. And then obviously lost to Roscommon as well. And I think one kind of thing worth pointing out from what I've seen from Kildare is that defensively they look very weak at the moment. I mean, even in that win over Fermanagh, they conceded 14 points. They conceded 16 points versus Armagh. They conceded 11 versus Clare. And then also in their defeat to Roscommon, they conceded 2 goals and 11 points. So they're conceding double digits in all their games, which I think is very disappointing. Their most recent game, in fact, actually against Laois, was probably their most impressive. A 5-point away win. They conceded 10 points in that game. And that was a huge victory for Kildare, because if they hadn't have won that, we would have been talking about Kildare potentially getting relegated. And, given the Tier 2 and Tier 1 structure that would have been in place, it would have set Kildare back massively in their hopes to become, one of the top teams in Leinster football again. Now, obviously, we know a lot of Kildare's very talented players. I mean, you obviously have Neil Flynn in there. You have Daniel Flynn, who is coming back into the side. He made a couple of cameo appearances, but didn't really make too much of an impact. You have Jimmy Hyland in there, young up-and-coming player. But I think their best player in the league so far this season has been Paddy Brophy. He was significant in their victory over Laois. He was very impressive. So I would say Paddy Brophy, the standout player for Kildare this season. And I think their last 2 fixtures are actually quite favourable. So they play Cavan at home, and then they also play Westmeath at home. So I do think Kildare will get out of the relegation scrap as well. They do have a lot of potential to survive, but certainly in terms of what Kildare were aiming for at the start of the season, it has been quite disappointing. We then have both Westmeath and Laois, who are both locked on 5 points, and yeah, I'm going to be honest, very impressed with Laois. I really thought that coming into Division 2 that they were going to be one of the teams that would potentially get relegated. I mean, when you think about it, the Kingston brothers are no longer there anymore. They're no longer in the panel. They've opted out. They also lost their captain as well, which of course I believe was very significant. But what they've actually done is they've brought through some younger players into their side, a lot of players who were coming through at under 20 and at minor level, and they've integrated them into the team and been quite impressive. At the start of the season, they fought back massively in that opening game versus Roscommon to get a point, which I think was highly significant. And then they also beat Armagh by 6 points. So when you think about it, Armagh and Roscommon, as we said before, in the top 2, and Laois were able to take 3 of their 5 points against those 2 teams, which is highly impressive. Unfortunately for Laois, they just haven't quite been able to continue that run. I mean, they were quite disappointing versus Cavan, just 1-6 in that game, losing by 10 points, and then they followed that up with a 1-point win away at Clare. Certainly for Laois, that was a significant victory to bounce back from that defeat to Cavan. They then obviously lost to Kildare, as we were saying, by 5 points. In terms of some of the standout players for Laois, I mean, Evan O'Carroll and Kieran Lillis have looked very good. I mean, Evan O'Carroll scored 1-6 against Roscommon, and Kieran Lillis scored 1-3. So very impressed with Laois in those regards, and certainly moving in the right direction. We then obviously had Westmeath, who were on the same amount of points as Laois, and certainly still with a big chance of either getting promoted or still getting relegated. And I mean, Westmeath again, you know, we weren't too sure what to think of Westmeath coming into Division 2. Where are they going to survive, or where are they going to fight for promotion? And in the end, they've kind of ended up in the middle. And I suppose one kind of significant factor with Westmeath has been their home form. You know, wins over Fermanagh at home, a draw with Armagh, which was probably their most impressive performance in all honesty, because against Armagh, I mean, they scored 3-12, getting 21 on the scoreboard. So very impressive there against Armagh, one of the promotion favourites. And I suppose kind of some of the standout players for them, Luke Loughlin, and obviously John Heslin. I mean, John Heslin's been doing it for a long time now for Westmeath, and you know, if there's been any player really in the past 5 or 6 years or so that has really epitomised Westmeath more than John Heslin, I mean, it definitely has been him. He has been outstanding. So Westmeath certainly looking in a very positive position. And then we have Cavan. Now Cavan, I suppose in some similar ways to Laois, I mean, I kind of thought they would struggle coming into Division 2 because, you know, when you look at it, Cavan have lost some of their significant players this year as well. Darragh Mackey has retired, I believe, and it wasn't looking too good on the opening day of the season. You know, they were beaten by Armagh by 13 points on the opening day, and it was looking worrying for Cavan. I mean, you didn't really think where they were going to find the options to potentially survive in Division 2, but actually what they've done is they've gone on a very good run since then, winning 3 of their 4 matches. And you know, they beat Westmeath 117-113, and they also followed that up with a victory over Laois, as we were saying, a 10-point victory. So Cavan looking very good at the moment, looking very bright, bringing through some young players as well. And you know, when it did look a bit bleak in that opening game versus Armagh, but they've responded very well, and I think they've shown a lot of togetherness really to respond to that defeat and really kind of get back on the board and get back to their winning ways. And I suppose something worth pointing out for Cavan is they've been very high scoring really in Division 2 this season. I mean, they've scored 7 goals in their opening 4 matches, which, you know, is quite a high scoring amount. And, you know, the likes of Stephen Murray, Oisin Pearson have really kind of stood out for Cavan in getting those goals and really firing them to the position that they're in on the table. And, you know, when we looked at it on the opening day, they looked like being relegation candidates, and now, you know, going into the final 2 matches, a real chance of promotion with the way they've played. And it would have been interesting to see how they would have gone on in those last 2 matches. And then we had both Armagh and Roscommon, who were both sitting top with 7 points on the board. Both have had their big moments. I mean, both have had significant victories, but both have also had some underwhelming defeats. You know, as we were saying before, Armagh struggling to get past the likes of Westmeath, Roscommon losing to the likes of Fermanagh away from home. So they've both had their up and down moments this season. In terms of some of the players I'd look out for Roscommon, I mean, you're looking at Enda Smith, Keane McKeown, especially Keane McKeown. He's been one of the players who's caught the eye most notably. I mean, obviously with Roscommon, we know a lot of the talent that they already have, and the likes of Connor Cox, for example, as well. So certainly kind of moving in the right direction. Roscommon, you know, not really as consistent enough as you'd want to see them in Division 2, but certainly they have shown at times the quality that they do possess. And then as for Armagh, I mean, Armagh probably one of the most exciting teams in Gaelic football at the moment when you look at some of the players they're bringing through. I mean, Rian O'Neill in particular, I mean, he broke on the scene last year and was looking very positive and very bright indeed. I mean, he was scoring goals for fun, and he was looking very talented, a very kind of versatile forward player, very tall, very hard to knock him off the ball. Can play him as a front man as well, and he can also peel off towards the corner forward area. And then you've also got Connor Turba, you know, who broke on the scene versus Cavan and looked very impressive. And you've got some other players in there like Stephen Campbell as well. You know, you've got a manager in Kieran McGeeney who's won All-Ireland. So you've got born winners all over this Armagh side, and they're certainly one of the teams to watch in Gaelic football in the next 5 years or so. Definitely looking very bright going into the final run of fixtures for promotion. So if we look on screen at the last 2 fixtures right now, we'll look at, of course, the second last run of fixtures, of course. So as you'll see right now, I've taken a screenshot here from Wikipedia. It will say round 7. They've mixed up the fixtures for some reason. This is round 6. But as you'll see there, Cavan playing Roscommon, Clare taking on Armagh, Kildare versus Westmeath, and Fermanagh versus Laois. We'll start with Fermanagh versus Laois. I'd go with Laois in this one. I think they've been very impressive at times this year, and I just think Fermanagh at this stage, unfortunately, are going to be the team that finishes bottom. I mean, they are at home. They could have a potential to turn this one around, but I think Laois have shown enough in their 5 matches to turn it around. With players like Evan O'Carroll and Kieran Lillis, I think they'll be able to get that victory. Kildare versus Westmeath is another very interesting one. I think Kildare have started to turn the corner, beating Laois by 5 points, and I think they understand the significance. They would have understood the significance going into this game, I mean, with the whole tier 1 and tier 2 structure. So I reckon they would have beat Westmeath at home. You had Clare versus Armagh. Very difficult one for Clare, unfortunately, going home to the team who's at the top. I mean, Armagh away from home have had a few disappointing results, as we were saying. I mean, they lost away to Cavan, and they also drew away at Westmeath. So not impossible for Armagh to mess up this game. But I am going to go with Armagh away against Clare. I reckon they'd have enough. And I reckon they would pretty much shore up promotion with a victory. You then obviously would have had Cavan versus Roscommon. Now, a huge game in many ways, because if Cavan had won this at home, you would have been talking about them in the potential for a Division 2 final. Very difficult one to call, I'm not going to lie. I mean, Cavan, you look how high scoring they've been, 7 goals in their opening 4 games. And Roscommon haven't actually been that highest of scorers, and with the significance of home form kind of playing a massive difference, I actually would have gone with Cavan to pull out the victory here. Now, does that mean that I'm saying that Cavan are a better team than Roscommon? No, I do think Roscommon are the better team, but I just think with the advantage of home form, with everything that was on the line, and with how good Cavan have been in terms of scoring goals, I reckon they would have won this game. So going into the last run of fixtures, Fermanagh would have been very much already relegated. It would have then really been between Clare, Laois and Westmeath, as in, who would have joined Fermanagh in getting relegated. And if we look at some of the fixtures right now, I mean, interesting enough, you have Westmeath playing Laois, so whoever loses this game could potentially go down, because you actually have Clare taking on Fermanagh. So I mean, I think Clare beats Fermanagh. I think Clare, with the home form that they've shown and possessed at times this season, and a lot of times, as we said before, Clare have been a little bit unlucky, losing by the odd point here or there. So I would have reckoned that Clare would have got the victory here. In terms of Westmeath, Laois, I mean, again, we look at home form as a real significance. I mean, Laois have had some good away victories, but Westmeath at home have been very good, and it would have been a tough one to call this, being perfectly honest. I mean, I think I'd go with a draw. I really cannot split them. Actually, no, I'm going to go with Laois to get the victory. I just think Laois would have a bit more than Westmeath. I mean, Westmeath at home are very good, but I just reckon with what's on the line, I think Laois would have been able to get the job done here, which, I mean, is kind of significant, because it actually would have relegated Westmeath. So Westmeath and Fermanagh would get relegated, and it sounds kind of crazy in many ways, but I think that's what would have happened, in my opinion. I really do. So then the promotion battle, you had Armagh versus Roscommon and Kildare versus Cavan. Now, going into the final 2 games, you would have had Cavan ahead of Roscommon. Armagh would have very much already been promoted. Still a slight potential of them not getting promoted, but very much they would have had their promotion all but settled. And Armagh would have already been, in my opinion, been thinking towards that Division 3 or that Division 2 final in Croke Park. So I actually think Roscommon would beat Armagh, and I actually think Kildare would beat Cavan, and that would lead Armagh and Roscommon to the Division 2 final. Now, this division, it's kind of all over the place. It's very hard to predict. There's a lot going on here, but I do think that if I was going to make predictions, this is how it would all end up. So we would have Armagh and Roscommon in the Division 2 final, and Westmeath and Clare getting relegated. Alright lads, that is going to be the end of the video. So we obviously looked at Division 2 in this video. We will look at Division 1 in the next couple of days in terms of how that would have finished. But anyway lads, do leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff if you could. Share this out to your friends and family. And yeah, my name is Aaron, and I'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.